Hey guys, it's Nathan from the Kentucky Cycling YouTube channel. Welcome to the next Zoom interview in the Kentucky Cycling Connection series. I'm excited to introduce my guests today who all hold one of the top positions on Wandrers' Kentucky leaderboard. These Kentucky Wanderers include Danny Barnes, Tom Sikora, Gayle Tomlinson, Eddie Bruner, and Tim Smith. Welcome everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot.
For those who are not familiar with the site, Wanderer is a bike exploration game. You win by going to places you've never been before. Wanderer uses your Strava data to track your unique miles, and those could be road miles, or they also include some trail miles. It's basically anything that is on the Open Maps resource. Wanderer has leaderboards starting at the county level, moving up to the state, country, continent, and the world. For more information about Wanderer, be sure to check out my interview with Wanderer's creator, Craig Durkin. This interview is a follow-up piece to my interview with Craig. And what we have here on the slide is actually a screenshot of Kentucky's Wanderer leaderboard. And I thought it would be fun to bring together riders from the Kentucky leaderboard as they represent a fairly elite group of riders who have collectively ridden somewhere in the neighborhood of about 20,000 unique Kentucky miles. The Wanderer data is always changing, just like the Strava data. And so when I did this invitation, at the time, I was shooting to get the top 5 people on the leaderboard, and I wasn't sure that I'd be able to get everybody. I had invited Tom Hughes, and he accepted, but we haven't seen him yet tonight, so I guess he wasn't able to join us. He's currently holding the #1 spot on the leaderboard. I'll say that this data is all as of May 29th of 2020. So it may even be different as we're recording it. But the #2 position is Danny Barnes. #3 is Tom Sikora. I extended an invitation to Bruce, and Bruce was flattered but said he'd rather not be interviewed, and that's fine. And then #5, we've got Gayle. Now, have you recently joined Wanderer, Gayle?
Yes, I joined just this month at the suggestion of Danny Barnes, who I enjoy riding.
Well, very good. So that addition prompted an invitation, because when I first went out to look for those top 5, your name wasn't on there. And the way that the Wanderer works is you can easily get dethroned if somebody joins who has ridden more miles than you. So Gayle popped up and bumped some other people down, including Eddie Bruner, who's in 6th place, and Tim Smith. So we actually have Danny, Tom, Gayle, Eddie, and Tim all with us this evening, who occupy basically spots 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7 on Kentucky's leaderboard. So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
What I thought I'd do actually is just to kind of go through some stats for each of you guys and kind of dig into this. You all, again, represent a fairly elite group of riders, and so I kind of want to start, towards the bottom of that leaderboard and just work our way up. Starting with Tim, who's in this #7 position. So what I've basically done here is I've gone out and pulled some information from Strava, kind of that summary data, and I'll just say this is when you look at somebody's Strava page, you get a side-by-side comparison, and it was really humbling for me to look at my stats side-by-side to all of you all. So Tim has ridden 2,598.2 unique Kentucky miles, which represents 2.719% of Kentucky being complete. I got to tell you, from my perspective, that's pretty darn impressive. In terms of your Strava miles, you've got 27,656 miles. You've completed 2,500 rides on Strava, with your biggest ride being 108 miles and your biggest climb being 1,039 feet. Do you remember, Tim, where that climb or where that biggest ride was?
The biggest ride, a few years, I did it, I think 3 times, and my family had like an event over Labor Day weekend that was in just south of Yosemite, Kentucky, which is a little south of Danville. Really pretty area to ride in, and so that was Louisville. That was going Louisville to Yosemite, or obviously it's Yosemite, but they say Yosemite down there. So that was a really delightful route. Getting out of Louisville, going through Taylorsville, and then sort of cutting down through Willisburg, Junction City, and then down that way. Real pleasant route. Was able to do that, I think 3 times, and then the family would drive down that weekend, and I'd go home in the car.
Cool. And do you know if your biggest climb was on that route or if it was someplace else?
What's interesting is I don't know what climb that is. Now you've intrigued me. I'm going to have to go back in and dig into where that biggest climb actually is, because I don't know.
I took this screenshot on a laptop computer, and the fact that it appears in blue, I'm guessing you can link to it, at least on a laptop. I don't think you can do that on a phone, but
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's all pretty interesting stuff. So over here on the top right, we've actually got a screenshot of your Wanderer map. There's a fair amount of blue there. And if I didn't know anything about you, this is a really cool thing about Wanderer. There's no timestamp here. So this is for the entirety of your Strava data. But not knowing anything about you, there seems to be a large cluster. Actually, I do know. I'm cheating a little bit, but there's a large cluster up here in the Louisville area. So is it fair to assume that you're from that area?
Yeah, I am from Louisville, and I commute a lot. So I think at least from Jefferson County, I mean, I know folks who live in the area who certainly ride more miles than I do. But I commute, and I sort of search out all the nooks and corners and crannies and whatnot else in Louisville. So I've covered a fair amount of Jefferson County. Just go into different neighborhoods and whatnot.
Very good. And then just kind of looking at this, looks like you certainly haven't isolated yourself to Louisville. You've been lots of different areas throughout the state, I guess primarily in central and eastern Kentucky.
Yeah, most of the trips eastern Kentucky really are related to bike packing or bike touring. I had a really nice run a few years ago. Some friends of mine sometimes were involved, and we do, bike pack style off-road tours, all up and down Daniel Boone National Forest, S Tree Campground, Lago Linda Campground. So really had a really nice trip down to Big South Fork. I ride a lot of gravel. A lot of the stuff on the Wanderer site there has a fair number of rides in southern Indiana, because there's some really nice gravel that's within reach of Louisville, with not too bad a drive. So sort of go to southern Indiana for local gravel, and then have had done some really nice trips down the Daniel Boone National Forest, just doing all kinds of forest riding.
Very good. And I, on a very selfish note, I've been just starting to kind of dip my foot into the gravel world this year and started to do some ride videos. And I've already been picking at Tim's brain for good gravel rides. So I'm always happy to make acquaintance with folks who have been out and explored a lot of these places, and there are a lot of cool places here. Then looking at your U.S. Wanderer map, looks like you definitely have done some rides outside the state as well, little pockets here and there, I guess mostly in the Southeast, and I think that's probably true for a lot of you folks, but as we get further into this, you're going to see that there are some exceptions to this. Are there any places outside of the state beyond Indiana that have been particularly fun for you to ride, Tim?
I've done 3 trips in the last few years to Big Bend National, well, sort of that whole area down in South Texas along the border. I have a good friend who lives just north of Dallas, and so I've all of a sudden, life just sort of presents opportunities. So I've done 3 trips, basically bike packing style off-road trips down there, and it's just really great country. It's really unique, big skies, lots of empty roads, great terrain. So that's been a real highlight. And I'm in discussion with my buddy about going back next spring to do more of the national park instead of the state park. So I'll get more Wanderer tracks down there, Big Bend area.
Cool. And then one question that I'm really have a burning desire to know that all of you are going to be asked is, you've been doing all these rides. You've made a fair amount of blue here within the state of Kentucky. Out of all the rides that you've done, what's your favorite place to ride in the state?
I would say that would be gravel riding in Daniel Boone National Forest. All up and down through that area. I don't think there's one specific. I know there's some real nice riding in and around McKee, Kentucky, but just all up and down looking at forest road maps and, satellite view and just finding all those little corners of gravel and forest road and whatnot else. And it's just really beautiful. And obviously you don't have traffic issues. And that's if I have that open weekend, that's where I try to do it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you do the gravel championship race down in
No, it's
Greyhawk?
funny is I'm not a racer. I'm a little bit of a jack of all trades. I commute, I ride gravel, I ride mountain bike, ride road. And so, I know some racers and they're all faster than me, and that's good for them. I like to camp and do day rides and, take pictures and watch birds and, hang out. So
I'm not a racer either, but I did it, and it's a great course.
that area I have done, in fact, I was not that long ago, I was looking at the map for that race, and I basically have done mostly all of those roads at some point. Go up to S Tree Campground, which is, on federal lands, and just park at S Tree and just sort of beat around, in that area. And the gravel championship goes through quite a few of those roads.
Well, now, and I'll just share this partly at my urging because I resemble the remark that I'm not a racer. Keith Cottingham, assuming that the Kentucky Gravel Championship happens this August, is actually going to offer a fun ride, a 30-mile route this year that's for the non-racers. So stay tuned for more details for that. You've also got an Instagram account where you share a lot of your photos from your rides on Instagram, and you can be followed at Transitex. Is that Transy as in Transylvania?
Yep, attended Transy, and that was my nickname. So at least it's easy for me to remember. So
good deal. Okay, so moving on to the number 6 on the leaderboard, we've got Eddie Bruner, and my mind immediately goes to his Instagram. This guy is prolific with his road ride pictures. And he's out on that bike probably about more than anybody I can even aware of. Eddie, what immediately jumps out to me in terms of your stats is in 2020, you've already ridden over 6,000 miles, and it's not even halfway through the year yet, man. That is an impressive figure. So I'm going to start out asking you, how many miles do you typically ride in a year, and what do you expect to get this year?
A typical year for me is I shoot for 12. I usually am at, say, 12,300, 400, 500 with 700,000 feet of climbing. This year, because my business was closed for 9 weeks during the COVID shutdown, I'll probably get 14,000 without changing any habits. I don't really shoot for that. It just happens. I don't look at my week and say, oh, have I ridden enough for this, or look at my day. I do my thing and it just works itself out. It's just what I ride. It's what I like. As Tom on here can tell you, I'm probably at the happiest when I'm pedaling down the road. Anybody that's ever ridden with me, I'm just kind of giddy at riding. I have no other way of explaining that. It's been a constant in my life since the early 80s. I came to the bike as it was a counterculture sport in those days. I was never a team sport fit-in kind of person, so it just fit my personality. And through all the different phases of life, I'm in my 50s now, that it's always been there. So it's what I do.
Well, cool. So in looking at your stats for Wanderer, you've ridden 3,500 unique Kentucky miles, which represents 3.663% of the state. On Strava, you've logged 82,287 miles. I aspire to do that in my lifetime with 3,804 total Strava rides. That just is mind-boggling. I'm having a hard time getting my mind around this.
Like Tim said, I commute as well as ride. Now I commute in a city that's the size of a lot smaller than obviously Louisville. So, I mean, it's funny. People laugh at my commutes because I live about 0.4 of a mile from my store. So I do all this random stuff to make the bike ride worthwhile. But it's funny, just from riding to my store and going to the bank and going to the post office and going to get lunch and going to get this, I can find 8-10 miles of the day that I would have been in a car burning petrol that now I'm on a bicycle. So those ride numbers are kind of stacked, if you will, with like little commutes.
Yeah, I would interject and say the same thing. I have quite a few rod numbers, but like I went and met my boys for lunch, and that was 2 more rides worth, and I think I did a mile and a half total. But
But now what I'll do I will say with my commuting day, I run a Garmin for the day, so you'll see these rides that are like 4 miles, 26 minutes moving time, 8 hours total, because it was just for the day, because I just can't deal with this save start stuff. But I get a lot of rides from that commuting ad set in. So.
Well, cool. So in terms of your biggest ride, it's 113.4 miles long, and your biggest climb is 5,000 feet. Do you remember where that ride was?
I can tell you about it. I'm not as some of these guys. I'm not these real long mileage rides. I don't do those 150, 160, 200 mile rides. I have a lot of friends that do that stuff. It doesn't kind of fit my riding for whatever reason. I just don't. But that was for US Bike Route 23 that my organization, Cave Country Trails, got approved as the newest national bike route last year, which goes from the Simpson County, Tennessee line in Simpson County up to LaRue County. It connects Tennessee Route 23 with US 76 that comes through Hodgenville. So that was on that route probably was when we were mapping it out, picking out what it was going to be before we went through the process with the federal government to get it approved. And it's the only U.S. national bike route that goes through a national park too. So that's kind of neat, something we're kind of proud of.
Cool.
The 5,000 foot climb, that's Materone in northern Italy on the Swiss border in the Alps.
Wow. Fancy.
I just know that because that was that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it made an impression, no doubt. And so looking over here at your Kentucky Wanderer map, again, there's these little darkened in areas down in the southwest central part of the state. Where are you from?
At Glasgow, and that's just like that is, just like Tim was talking about. He's up in Jefferson County. If you zoomed in on that, it's just a mass of blue from obviously Glasgow and then the county and then the surrounding counties, as any of us do, as you ride from home, that you tend to kind of congregate in that area. So that's where I've got a whole lot of it. I dip down across into Tennessee there too.
Very good. And I see that, actually the majority of you guys seem to have darker colors when you're looking at your U.S. map, close to where you live, but you definitely have ventured out of the state as well, down into places like Louisiana even.
Louisiana, Mississippi. Gravel was kind of the conversation carrying over from Tim, and I'll add a little of that. I'm 99% of what I do is on asphalt. I'm a road cyclist I won't use the term roadie because that's all there was when I started riding bikes. You didn't have mountain bikers. So it's just, you're just a cyclist. But roads are the vast majority. I ride a little bit of gravel, and I tend to do it out of state. I do the Mississippi Gravel Cup stuff in Mississippi. I have friends there, and so I'll go down to those events. And what you're seeing in Louisiana is the Rouge-Roubaix, which is the 109-mile ride that leaves Baton Rouge that is on just some ridiculously terrible roads and mixed surface, gravel and asphalt. And it's one of those that you kind of you look forward to the gravel because that's the smoother portions of that race. Wow. But those are some races that I participated with and down there, and because I have friends in those areas.
Before we leave your slide, Eddie, I think it's worth noting that one aspect of Wanderer is that regardless of which level that you're talking about, starting at the county or the state or whatnot, there's this leaderboard, and there are points granted to the person who actually, extra points, they're granted to the person who gets the most new miles in a particular month. And so Eddie was actually recognized for being April's leader. Going into this interview, I thought that Eddie was going to be the leader for May, but I understand that Danny has actually come from behind and dethroned him.
Danny, he threw the bike at the line, man. He did. Today he pushed that across 10 miles, and if I could afford that private plane back to Kentucky before midnight, I'd find 20 miles.
Yeah. Hey, Eddie, I checked your Instagram and saw you were in South Carolina, so I knew you weren't going to be riding.
Yeah. Hey,
so you opportunistically took a look.
I saw this week coming along, and I'm watching 3 people. I'm watching Danny, I'm watching Gayle, and I'm watching Brian Beckham, who's a good friend of mine. And Brian was coming on strong, and he probably would have hit both of us, Danny. But he decided to go ride Natchez Trace the last 4 days. So he did 404 miles in Mississippi, so he wasn't in the state, right? So I knew you were the guy I'm battling with, but I'm working. You know, we're back to work this week, and I know it's gone this weekend. And I was out last week finding every random side dirt road I could get 500 foot on. And I even told my wife, I said, I don't have the buffer. I'm coming into the weekend. I'm not going to be riding in the state, and I'm only got him by like 102 miles. There's no way he's not going to do that. And,
I just got lucky, man.
well, yesterday, it's funny. Yesterday, you pulled it within 20, and I flip over to the weather. This is how sad I am. I go over to the weatherchannel.com, and I'm like, man, there better be some tornadoes in Lexington. I'm looking for some bad weather, and I see sunshine. I'm like, he's got it. So good for you. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Thanks, man. It was a fun day today.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, you've hit some nice counties, some nice places. I'm impressed.
We've been scorching it, and Gayle's been with us the last 3 or 4 rides.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I don't know how close she's watched it, but we flip-flop 5 and 6 all month long. I would go out to these random little towns in Barron County and go ride 70% of them, get that 20% bonus, and boom, would pop up above her, and then she'd go ride bigger rides. So I'm having fun with Wanderer. I've been on it since about August of last year. So I've been having a lot of fun with it.
Well, great. Well, speaking of Gayle, so she's kind of a newcomer to the Wanderer scene, but she's one of these people who, when she brings all those Strava metrics with her, kind of comes in with a big boom. I mean, this is not a silent entrance that she makes. So I want to kind of talk through some of your metrics. And also, you know, I'll say the thing that jumps, or back to you rather, is this U.S. Wanderer map for you. You are not someone who has just hung out in the Southeast. You've traversed the nation.
He has the impressive map.
Yeah. Cheers, Gayle. Cheers to Gayle.
Yeah.
Thank you. I got to be around here. And I will say that I've only been on Strava for 4 years.
Really?
Yeah.
And in 4 years, you've logged 34,299 as of May 29th miles on Strava.
That's right.
Wow. All right. Well,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
She's burning it up. Good for her.
And I retired 13 months ago, so that's freed up a lot of my time. That's for sure.
That helps. So in terms of looking at some of your metrics, so you've ridden 3,572 unique Kentucky miles, 3.738% of the Kentucky complete. You've logged 898 rides on Strava, with your longest ride being 143.5 miles and your biggest climb being 5,820 feet. Do you remember where each of those took place?
Oh, sure. Yeah, the 140 miles was on my dream trip across the United States last September and October. And we left Pagosa Springs, Colorado in a rainstorm over the divide and rolled into Taos, New Mexico. And so that was 140 miles, and we climbed over 10,000 feet on that day. So,
so next, are you going to tell us that you were carrying gear with you? Were you fully loaded for these 143 miles?
No. I went. I a fully supported ride with snacks along the way.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that you were able to take advantage. I was like, man, that would have been a whole nother level. So what about this 5,820 feet of climbing?
Oh, I can think of lots of days I've climbed more than that. So I'm not sure why as my maximum.
Well, I think this is a single climb. Yeah, it's a single push is what that is. A segment, if you will. Yeah.
Okay. Gosh, that might have been in Arizona because I climbed both Mount Graham and Mount Lemmon. So that would probably be one of those.
I'm going to tell you, I clicked on it to look at it when I was looking at your profile. It's Mount Lemmon. I looked at it.
Well, cool. So you.
I wanted to see where that was.
Yeah. Well, and that's the great thing about this stuff. I mean, it's really fascinating. When you made your trip across the U.S., did you follow the winds and go from west to east?
Yes. Yeah, and it did work out pretty well. We had more tailwind than headwind, but I would say the prevailing was crosswind. We mostly had wind from the. It had an absolutely dream day in Oklahoma, where we rode over 100 miles and finished at 21 and a half miles per hour.
Wow.
Well, we had a tailwind.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You feeling strong that day. That's your
Yeah.
story and you're sticking to it, right?
Right.
Well, that's cool. So that other than that day in Oklahoma, so one question I might ask for you, and I think I forgot to ask, I'm gonna have to circle back around to Eddie here in a second. So I want to know not only what's your favorite place to ride in Kentucky, but what's the prettiest place that you saw on your journey across the U.S.?
Okay. Well, I would say first I'll back up and say I have lived in 6 different places as an adult, and I would say that the bluegrass of Kentucky is my favorite place to bike by far. And I'm fortunate enough to say that Bourbon County, Kentucky is my favorite riding, and I'm about 100 yards from the county line. And I just find it, very enjoyable to see the variety of scenery and streams and farms of all different types and woods through Bourbon County. So I'm quite fortunate to crisscross there quite a bit. Coming across the U.S., it's hard to come down with just one, but the initial part, Santa Barbara, heading south along the Pacific Ocean was really, really quite amazing. And then the second one I would mention would be Monument Valley.
Oh, yeah.
Monument Valley was absolutely breathtaking, and the weather was perfect, and we had a tailwind and no traffic, and it was just, I'd never been there before, so I found it, more amazing than shown in the movies, the westerns that I watched when I was a little kid.
That's cool. So Eddie, I apologize for glossing over this with you. So where out of all the riding you've done throughout the state, where is your favorite place to ride in Kentucky?
I thought about this a bit since you told us to kind of be prepared. That was one of your questions. And, an easy knee-jerk go-to is going to just say Harlan County, because it is a special place and the mountains are special for a variety of reasons. But I've got to go back to kind of where I live in Cave Country. I can't say enough good about the cycling in South Central Kentucky. Barron, Metcalfe, Monroe, Cumberland, Adair, Hart, Edmondson. These are counties with big Amish populations. They're heavy, heavy agriculture counties. And it is very, very common for me to ride 10, 15 miles and not pass a car. And everybody that's visited me, either from other parts of the state or from out of state, and even out of the country, I had a friend from Italy come and ride in Barron County 2 years ago. They're shocked that we have, our roads are smooth as glass. We have nothing that's chip and seal. Everything's paved. And it's just a slow life. There's not fast moving stuff. These roads I ride on don't go anywhere. And the amount of Amish and how friendly they are, and that just adds something to it that it's a pretty special place to ride. And I get that. It's easy to say it living there, but I've heard it time and time again from visitors from in and outside the state. It's a pretty special place. So I think I'm just going to stick with where I ride.
All right. That sounds good. Well, kind of moving on up the list, the next person on our list here is Tom Sikora. And Tom, I got to tell you,
Tom.
Yeah, that's out of all the pictures, these are all pictures from people's Strava accounts. That helmet's pretty cool looking, man. I got to tell you.
Oh, thanks.
Tom's profile picture resembles him the least of anybody. It's like it's a space dude.
Yeah, outer space.
Yeah.
Well, just looking at some of your metrics here, man. I mean, so now we jump up a bit. You know, we're 4,346.5 unique Kentucky road miles, and that is represents over 4.5% of the state. And I tell you, these percentages. I mean, you start looking at some of the leaders, and you realize, I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of miles. With a total Strava miles of 45,724. With 2,272 Strava rides. Your biggest ride being 187.6 miles, and with the biggest climb being 4,000 feet. So tell us, do you remember, I'm sure you do, where was that 187-mile ride?
Well, you know, before I get to that, I want to say I think I'm the youngest one here. I'm 41. And it's not like we just picked up a bike when Strava started.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Here.
In 1990, my folks gave me $150 to get my first real road bike at 12 years old. And from that time I had in a journal, you know, I didn't even have a bike computer. I was measuring with a compass and, you know, and a ruler on a map, figuring out how many miles I was actually going. And I know I can speak probably for everyone here. You know, this is really cool, but I know Eddie Bruner and Danny Joe and Tim have probably done tens and tens of thousands of miles more than, you know, what they can just see here on Wanderer. But that being said, so I just want to say kudos to all you guys for the life of riding you've all had. But that 187-mile ride was a round trip from Lexington to Louisville and back. And the big climb was, I lived in France, in the south of France, for about a year and a half. And that was climbing up a famous climb to a ski station, Plateau de Baille.
Yeah. Well, and I think you make a fair point, you know, when it comes to, you know, this all being based upon Strava data. And obviously we've got a lot of experience, which isn't reflected in that universe. I know even as far as digital rides, I lament the fact that I didn't start with Strava. I started with another platform and eventually migrated to Strava. So those rides are lost to me. But the flip side of that is that Strava, you know, makes their API available to folks like Craig Durkin and you know, who developed this app to be able to do some cool things with it. So you know, hats off to Strava. I hope they continue, you know, to offer that to folks. But yeah, so I guess we can only look forward, but I think that point is
that's right.
Very well taken.
Let me say something to Tom, if I may, and kind of building on the way he started. We're looking at statistics, and these numbers are all great, but the side of this, I don't want to be lost, is the human side. And of all the many miles I put on the roads, one of my most memorable rides ever was with Tom we suffered like we've never suffered before through weather. And that's the side of this that can get lost in statistics is, you know, the kind of the memories of it and the good stuff. Right. Tom knows what I'm talking about that day.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just a ridiculous day. And
I know it too. It's on the Little Shepherd Trail.
Yeah. It was as ridiculous as it was, and with the amount of profanity as there was, I wouldn't have traded it for a moment when we got to a car, you know. So it was a pretty special thing. Anyway, that's the side of this that you don't see through the statistic.
Yeah.
That's right.
You know, and I appreciate that, you know, and that really was what, you know, I'm a data geek myself, and these maps, I mean, the visualization of these maps are just fascinating. And I think the downside potentially of Wanderer for me is that it's easy to spend way too much time looking at other people's maps. It's just fascinating stuff. But, you know, part of what I wanted to do here was kind of see some of these faces and hear from the people who are behind some of these really impressive statistics. So you know, in terms of, Tom, I'm looking at your Kentucky map. I'm guessing that you are in central Kentucky somewhere. Just looks like where a lot of your rides must originate, just kind of right in the center there somewhere.
I've lived in Georgetown, Lexington, Nicholasville, and Wilmore. Okay. So kind of everything on that that arc.
Yeah.
And 90% of my rides are from my front door and back. So that's just like Eddie was saying earlier. It's just like a spider web from my house. And it's hard for me to get new miles now because it's about 20 miles on any road that I take. So it's a 40-mile, 50-mile round trip before I can even think about getting even 1 or 2 unique miles.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, and that's something that's interesting. So, talking to, I don't know if you guys seen the interview with Craig Durkin, but, he said it was sort of an unintended consequence is that for the most new miles ridden in a particular, month tends to favor new riders.
Riders, sure,
yeah.
sure.
So it's interesting that way. So it kind of has to pushes you to venture out, but you certainly are a bit of an expert where Central Kentucky is concerned in terms of rides. It'd be hard to drop you someplace and not have you find your way out, I guess.
Yeah, it's a lot of the time I don't even plan my rides. I know the roads and I just get lost and I find another road that I know and I can get back somehow.
That's cool. That's cool. And then in terms of your U.S. maps, I've noticed on some spots. Looks like you've done some riding down in Florida. And
a couple of years ago I did when we were on vacation there.
And then,
boy, I don't know how they do it down there. It's too dang hot for me.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's too flat.
Fun.
Yeah, too flat. Too
windy.
Yeah. No, I've done riding all over the United States. I've actually done quite a bit of riding in Terlingua, where Tim was riding in Big Bend. Yeah. But this was before Strava, so I don't have that data. And also, I'm from suburban Washington, D.C.
Okay.
I'd say I wish I could see what my map would look like in Maryland and Virginia and Washington, D.C., but unfortunately, that's lost to time too. But if you go to my big map, I put quite a bit of miles in the south of France when I lived there.
Yeah.
And those were some very memorable miles as well.
I'll have to check that out. And that's also pretty fascinating stuff. I mean, to look on the world leaderboard and kind of look at some of these maps, where people are logging miles and just fascinating. I mean, really it makes you intrigued to kind of think about, who are these people and what kind of lives are they leading to be able to go and do all the writing they're doing. It's just fascinating.
I think Eddie Bruner might be the leader in Bermuda. I don't know. What do you think, Eddie? Are you?
It's pretty, honestly, there's a guy, Grant Gouge, that's got me by a few miles who lives there. But and we kind of keep up. I've met him there. He runs a bike shop, and he's like, I'm out of roads, man. There's no more roads. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. So one question I would want to try to remember to ask everybody is and Tom, maybe you can kind of speak to how this compares since you've lived other places in the country. Where is your favorite place to ride in Kentucky?
In Kentucky, I'd have to say Owen County because there's just no one who lives there. And the road,
he's right. I mean, the population is small for sure.
I think 7,000 or 8,000.
Yeah,
9,000, something
I
like that.
where there's no people.
Yeah. Hey,
and there's a lot of I like the spring classics in cycling where it's like real pitchy short climbs.
Okay.
Open roads, chip seal. Much to the chagrin of Eddie here. There's not much smooth tarmac in Owen County, but there's a lot of nice vistas, a lot of nice ridges. It's accessible, not really too much to me now because it's about 110 or 20 mile round trip for me to get to some nice roads there. But Owen County's got some beautiful, lonely roads, very little traffic. And because of my nature of how I ride, I do a lot of gentle trespass and say I'm sorry, or can I take this road?
I do some minor crime.
Yeah, I don't know if Tim's noticed this. I know where he rides south of, say, McKee and Heidelberg and Beattyville. But if you go to Estill County or Lee County and you fleetingly trespass, you're going to get met by someone with a shovel or a shotgun.
I'm a pretty active map user for that reason. I just try to pore over everything I can find. Because you're right, there are some spots where, yes, if you take the wrong road down that way, you're not always going to be greeted enthusiastically.
Yeah, that's right. And one thing I've noticed, there's good old boys all over, which is fine, but the good old boys in Owen County have always been
Good.
very fair to me and have been very welcoming. I've gotten watermelon and iced tea on more than one occasion, and I can't say the same thing in say Casey County or Lee County or Estill County or but I'd say overall Owen County I've had some best experiences in riding.
Cool. All right. Well, moving on up the leaderboard. So we've got a guy who likes pretty rings, or at least makes them. if you were to believe his Strava picture here, so Danny Barnes. So currently you are number 2 on the Kentucky Wanderer leaderboard with 4,800.9, and I'm guessing this number's climbed in the last few days, just given the trash talking that you've done Eddie's way.
I predict he goes number 1 by the end of the month. He's bearing down on Tom.
Well, the end of June.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, well, this one, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
He's got it.
Well, yeah. So you're with over 5% of Kentucky completed, and that number is pretty darn impressive in and of itself. In terms of Strava miles, you've got over 41,000 miles with over 1,400 rides, with your longest ride being 109.5 miles on Strava, and your longest climb being 3,741 feet. So do you remember each of those rides enough to know?
I don't. Can somebody click on it and tell me where it is?
That was in your backyard. You rode a bunch of loops.
Danny's map there is fairly densely populated in and around that Nicholasville area. I mean, that's at this level, usually for my map anyway, you got to drill way in down to the city level to see it look that densely blue.
Got a lot of miles in there.
I mean that's he's filled in a lot of, I mean, to be at the state level and have it be that solidly blue through there is
my wife and I, let me just say this, my wife and I, we've been riding with the cycling club for 20 years now. We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah. Well, and I guess you found every route there is in the vicinity of your area, huh?
And I don't know how you guys feel about driving to rides, but that's the only way we can get new miles in, unless you want to ride 250 miles, and to capture 30.
Right.
Yeah. I'm in that same boat too. I don't have a problem with it myself, Danny. I mean, I do it as well. There's some people that don't because of their circumstances, and there's others that don't because of an ideology. But and all that's great. I mean, this is a great sport. But I don't like what you're doing to driving out. I'm having to do that same stuff too, because I'm just as Tom was just saying. I mean, I roll out of my front door. I got to ride 40 miles to find something alley that I've not ridden. Yeah.
For us, let me just say this real quick. It's been part of the adventure spirit. We want to do adventure rides on new roads. And, you can map this stuff out on Ride GPS and put it on your little Garmin. Mm-hmm. And you can go somewhere, but you can still get surprised on stuff, And like today, I mapped out a ride, and it was on somebody's freaking driveway. And we had to turn around and come back out of there. But on the map, it showed like it went all the way through.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to give a plug out here to the Kentucky Department of Transportation, because I map rides out blindly on Strava. And 99.9% of the time, that's a good road and it works. Kentucky has got their roads figured out.
Let me just say this too. If you use the Kentucky Transportation website for the maps for the counties, it'll tell you which is paved,
absolutely,
gravel, unimproved, if there's a bridge there or not.
Cool.
Yeah.
And that's how Gayle and I have been doing it for a while.
I'm on that Google satellite, and I'm zooming in as hard as I can. I'm having to ask my wife, does this look like pavement to you? I can't tell.
Well, that's a good thought, Dan. I'm definitely after Eddie. I do a lot of zooming in and out of the satellite, or looking at gravelmap.com, which is under contributed to. So I'll say that. But yeah, that it's good to hear about that DOT resource. And I'm also looking at your U.S. map here. Is it my imagination, or is there kind of a line of blue down close to the
Florida.
coast?
Yeah,
Gulf,
a bunch of Florida.
You a Gulf Coast guy? Yeah.
I have friends that have lived there and invited us down, and then we went a couple of years on our own. And my brother lives in St. Augustine. We went over there for a little bit. We've been up in Michigan some, which is beautiful. If you guys have never been up in Michigan, I highly recommend it, man. It's some awesome stuff.
Cool. Yeah, and you've been up in the Upper Peninsula, looks like, too.
Yeah. It's awesome. All right, I got to give a big kudos out to Tom and Eddie on this. My favorite road, and I think this is the best road Kentucky has to offer, is the Little Shepherd Trail. It's a real road. It's paved, and it goes from like Pine Mountain to Kingdom Come State Park.
Yep.
Okay.
With some great vista, great views, up and down, just hard digs, just.
Is that the one that as you extend east, instead of being paved, it's non-paved?
Yes. Right? And then it goes paved again, and I've done the rest of the paved section too.
Let me tell you something. You need to ride it when it's 40 degrees, raining and foggy, and there's bears. And tell me what
you guys are crazy, man.
So I'm having a hard time, really getting to. Is this an honest answer, or is this because you had the most memorable near-death experience around this ride?
Well,
it's really a beautiful road.
There is actually a place called Eddie's Overlook on that road that we found by accident. So all joking aside, it's a neat road. You need to ride it in the right weather.
Man, it's better than a neat road. It's the best road Kentucky has to offer. I promise you, Nathan. Go check it out.
All right, man. Well, I believe that you have the conviction, Danny. I appreciate that. So we've actually had a late arrival, and we'll forgive him because he's from the West Coast and forgets how to convert back to Kentucky time.
A little bit tricky on that 3-hour difference there.
But we've got Tom Hughes on the call now, and Tom actually currently occupies the #1 spot on the Kentucky leaderboard with 5,102.8 unique Kentucky miles as of May 29th, and I doubt that number has changed in the last 2 days.
It's been a while
out on the West Coast. And so you've got, in terms of Strava miles, like over 55,000 miles. 2,916 rides logged, and then
I ran a lot.
So this is our biggest ride of 483 miles. Do you remember when that was?
That is, it was actually about 495 miles, but my phone died at the end there. It was the Grand Gravel 500 in Texas, and it was 500 miles, about probably 90% gravel, and of that 50% mud.
Wow.
So that one took me 50 hours and 50 minutes. I slept about 25 minutes over that period.
Wow.
That was my longest straight. I've done a lot. As you can tell from my big U.S. map, across the country a couple times, but that was my biggest of one effort.
That biggest climb, do you remember where that was at 4,255 feet?
I think that one is the Steens climb in Eastern Oregon. Last year I did a few races. The Grand Gravel 500 in Texas was the first in February, and then in April I did a race in Iowa, 340 miles of gravel, and then the big one of the year was the Oregon Steens Mazama 1000. That's 1,000 miles around Central Oregon, and that 4,255 foot climb is all gravel, washboard, absolutely terrible road up Steens. It starts at 5,000 feet, so it goes up over 9,000. That was a tough climb. Yeah. No services anywhere around. It's way out in the middle of nowhere. So that was an interesting one for sure.
Well, and Tom, I don't know. I know you caught the interview that I did with Craig Durkin when we brought up your
Yes.
map there. We were all like, "Wow, that's a cool looking map." We were geeking out over your Kentucky map. And you know,
Yeah.
and I think you had commented that most of your rides start in Louisville and then go
almost all
go
of them.
other places. And you have you're on a short list of people who have ridden in all 120 counties in the state. Is that correct?
Yes, I only know of one other a friend of mine named Duck Doe, older gentleman in that rides around Louisville, and he's just an awesome guy. And so I got a lot of input from him on some routes to go through different counties. And Eddie helped me out a lot actually around central Kentucky. So I had a lot of help from people that, you know, I reached out to all the big dogs in Kentucky, and like in Louisville, the Mad Dog, Brandon Orker, they do the Century rides. They have a lot of knowledge about the routes, so had a lot of help. It was beautiful. I just love Kentucky.
Well, good. So given that you've covered so much of the state, so you seem uniquely qualified, at least in terms of this call, to answer this question. Where is your favorite place in Kentucky to ride?
Oh man, there's so many. I love how everybody kind of thinks of one thing of Kentucky. Well, either the horse farm country, which is very beautiful, or the eastern Kentucky hills. But there's really so much varied terrain. I loved like the land between the lakes area, the whole Jackson Purchase. So many lakes, and the beautiful gravel out there is awesome. And then anytime I got a chance to go down Glasgow or around and Mammoth Cave Park is gorgeous. Probably my favorite training road in the whole state is the Old Frankfort Pike, going from Frankfort into Lexington. I did that one back and forth probably, I don't know, at least 15 or 20 times. I love that road. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Well, I've got a little story. When I was in sixth grade, a buddy who I ride with today, we lived in Frankfort, in the area down around the Capitol, and we were 12 years old. This was pre-cell phone. We asked our moms, you know, hey, can we ride our bikes to Lexington? And we didn't know how to do it, and we decided we'd go on Old Frankfort Pike. And I tell people, when you say Old Frankfort Pike, I don't know that I've ridden Old Frankfort Pike in its entirety since I was 12 years old, and I don't know that I'd ever do it again. You know, in its entirety.
It's a challenging road for a
12-year-old.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll say that the follow-up, that, you know, is we always say, hey, would you let your 12-year-old do that? And we say, heck no. So anyway,
I don't think so. It's pretty fast traffic out there, but for an experienced cyclist, you know, I always have my back of my helmet is covered in reflective, and I have, you know, multiple lights and everything on running daytime. So I felt really comfortable out there. And generally people I find outside of Louisville, actually all over Kentucky, were very respectful on the roads. I think the only times I ever had problems with traffic was actually in Louisville, or like inside of Lexington or something.
We're looking at your U.S. map, so it looks like you've gone various routes across the country. And we were alluding to this. So I'm interested in hearing, you know, as a fan of the movie Inspired to Ride, you know, which of course covers the Trans Am bike race, you know, as someone who's actually participated in that race, you know, just tell us a little bit about what your experience was like, and whether or not you feel like that movie is fairly representative of the experience or
not. The movie is really good. That was one of my big inspirations. Absolutely. Definitely wanted to do the race. I didn't find out that there was like people racing bikes across the country until it was 2016, and I lost my job, and I thought, you know, I was getting like severance, and I had some unemployment. So I thought, perfect timing, let's go. I started riding to the East Coast. I rode to Washington, D.C. along some awesome trails across Ohio and the the Great Allegheny Passage, across Pennsylvania, and then the C&O Trail into Washington, D.C. And I just met like so many cool people, and it was, man, it was just a mind-blowing experience. And then so I actually rode back to Louisville, and I decided I wanted to hang out for a little while and then ride all the way to the West Coast. And then I saw on Netflix the Inspired to Ride, and I was like, this is mind-blowing. Like, someday I have to do this race. It's pretty accurate as far as the content goes, because it shows people riding their bikes and eating, and that's all that happens. It's just nonstop. You're burning 10,000 calories a day. It's not like you're really putting in a ton of effort all the time, never sprinting, but you just don't get off the bike. I was on the saddle. I averaged like probably 16 hours a day on the saddle. So eating pretty much the whole time. My average speed on it was pretty low. I was probably around 15 miles an hour, most of the time. And there's tons of mountains out west. It's so much climbing. So when I did the Trans Am in 2018, I didn't make it all the way to the end, to Virginia. I kind of ran out of time a little bit, and it was definitely more difficult than it even seems, and it seems extremely difficult. So luckily, the Trans Am route goes right through Bardstown, and you just hang a left from there, and then I'm home in 50 miles. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to take the last few days of my vacation and hang out and relax before I go back to work.
Wow.
So, but it was fantastic experience. Everywhere out west, riding through Montana and through Yellowstone, it's just absolutely incredible. The Nez Perce Reservation in Idaho is about 99 miles, and there's no services. And you just have the Snake River to your right, and it's just endless, beautiful forests and mountains, and it's such an amazing experience to have, and something I'll have with me for the rest of my life for sure.
Well, sounds like it. That's awesome. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and just I'll open it up for a couple of questions for the group. Primarily, you guys are mainly road cyclists, but I'm interested to know what other types of riding do you like to do in addition to road cycling?
I mountain bike.
Any other mountain bikers in the group?
I mean, I'll do a little bit of single track. I ride a fat tire around. I'll play on gravel, just as we've been saying, but it's none of it I do much of. I mean, if you look at my miles, they're well over 99% are on tarmac.
Well, I know Tim mentioned earlier that he likes the gravel. Do you rest of you guys ride on gravel?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. To me, the gravel is just like road. I mean, and before gravel bikes, it was just you took a bike and rode on gravel. You didn't need a special bike.
That's right.
So.
That's right.
Well, I got my shirt on, my boondoggle.
Oh yeah, look at you.
Yeah. So I got into mountain biking. I sold my mountain bike before I moved to Oregon. I just didn't have space. I live in a tiny house, so had to reduce the stable. But in 2017, I got a mountain bike from Parkside Bikes in Louisville, and a full suspension, specialized camber. And I thought, you know what? I'd only been a road biker at that point, road bike and fixed gear. That's it. And so I got the full suspension. I thought, let's start doing the racing and check it out. And I did the Boondoggle series all over Southeast Kentucky, and I was just hooked, man. The Boondoggle series is awesome. They put on really cheap races. It's a great time. You get 50 guys out there just hammering, going at it, and then everybody just camps out, drink beer at the end. It's so much fun. But there's the Broken Spoke track. Single track was awesome, and they did a lot in Laurel County and Whitley County. Just beautiful riding out there for sure.
Are there any of you that only have one bike in your bike stable?
Actually, Nathan, I've only got one bike right now.
Really?
Wow. I do.
Well, what kind of bike is it? Because it must be a pretty awesome bike.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a couple of wheel sets. It's a Specialized Diverge. Specialized Diverge. I've got a wife and 3 kids, so they've got all the bikes now. I used to have 10 bikes, but now we've still got 10 bikes, but only one of them are mine.
I think you need to own a bike for every 1,000 miles a year you ride. That's that's what I go by.
So your Diverge, you probably got a 700C. Do you have a 650B wheel set as well?
Yeah, I share. My wife has a gravel bike, and she's got some blingy 650B wheels.
Yeah.
And I've got some nice 700C wheels. So we just swap back and forth.
Gotcha. That sounds very responsible. I got to say, I'm impressed. And who's just got 2 bikes? Anybody? 3 bikes? Who's got 3 bikes? Tom has 3 bikes. Yeah. So what are your 3 bikes, Tom?
Well, I'm working on getting down to one, like Tom, Sikora. I have a specialized Sequoia that's my main bike, and now I've got a gravel wheel set and a road wheel set for it. So it's kind of become my do-it-all, and I can throw on the fast deep dish tires and go far, or the gravel and go up into the mountains. But my other one, I have a 1974 Raleigh Grand Prix that I love. I actually bought the frame and fork in Shelbyville, modified it and put all not new, but all modern components except for an 80s Dura Ace crankset on there. And it's just something really cool. It's my fun ride around town. It's got really low gearing, so I can do some good climbing, and like 32s on it. And it's just super fun. And the steel has a great feel, and the fork, the real big rake on it, is super comfy. So that's cool. And then I have an old Pook fixed gear that I just ride to the grocery store. And I used to ride to bars when you could do that.
How many people, who's got 4 bikes? 5 bikes?
I don't know. 4
you don't know. You
not as many as Eddie, though.
Danny's got 4 or 5. He's not sure.
Okay, I've got a Calfee from the early 2000s, a 2014 Trek, a new Cannondale, it's a couple of years old, and an old Quintana Roo triathlon bike, and my mountain bike, my Yeti mountain bike. So I have 5.
All right, so 5. So Eddie or Tim, can you match that, or we're going higher?
I have a lot of bikes. That's all I'd like to say.
Are you
every now and then?
10?
You're just
every
now
say, and then. No, I'm not going to commit to a number. Every now and then.
Oh man!
I like to I'm hashtag bike blessed. I am. I've had the good fortune. But that's part of the fact that I do a lot of different kind of riding. So I got gravel bikes and touring bikes and road bikes, and got a fat bike I'm probably going to sell. I do a variety of kinds of riding, and so I have a variety of bikes. Pretty fun.
All right. So Eddie, how many bikes?
I have 15 bikes.
15.
Wow.
Eddie has more than me. I don't have 15.
Beautiful bikes.
Are those 15 bikes all rideable today?
Yeah, I rotate through all of them.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Okay.
I like bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got
you.
You know, do you have?
And they're all different. They all have a purpose to me.
N+1, man.
Things are geared differently, different geometries, different types of wheels.
How has Wanderer changed your riding? Assuming it has. If it has. Anybody?
Oh man, I love Wanderer. I'm preaching it to like everybody, all my internet friends, because it's such a good way. It's like a cool game. Who's getting the most miles per month in your own area or whatever. And to me, I'm like a guy that always has a goal, a big goal, sort of a long-term thing that I'm working on, like the 120 counties in Kentucky, and that kind of occupied my weekends and like my thinking during the week of coming up with routes and how am I going to get to that county, include all the ones that I missed and all that. So Wanderer makes it really easy. And like now that I'm in Portland, there's so much area that I haven't ridden to, and I don't know what's good and what's not good. So I just turned on Wanderer and I go literally wander around the city and like just discover new places that are cool and where to not go. So to me, it's awesome. I love it.
That sounds like the perfect commercial for the
Yeah.
Wanderer. Anybody else
They don't
want to try
even
to
pay
build
me.
on that?
I pay them.
Yeah,
believe it
that's
or
good.
not.
It's
That's
the
good.
same thing. I mean, it's caused me to seek out some new places, and I find that cool. Neat little things like trying to complete 100% of Glasgow. You'd think that wouldn't be hard with 128 miles of paved roads. That probably took me 1,000 miles of riding to do. It just fun little stuff like that. I rode down roads I have no reason to be on, didn't know were there. Just neat stuff like that. I found it's just kind of giving you something neat to fool with other than just going out and riding. I mean, I ride kind of like Tom does a lot. I roll out of the house and I determine my route based upon if it's easier to make a left or a right on that road. Just kind of go.
Exactly.
And it's given me something else to do. So I get a kick out of it. I enjoy it. I'm fun with it.
Found that a lot of the roads though were like driveways and stuff. Have you found that out,
That's
Tom?
true. Yeah,
Either Tom?
yeah, and there's a lot of like tiny little dead ends. I usually kind of skip those, but
Yeah.
yeah, but it definitely it leads you down. You don't know what's down at the end of that. It might be cool, and sometimes a lot of areas will have like pedestrian little get throughs or an opening in a fence or something, and you just pop right. So I've discovered a lot of cool new stuff just going down, like I said, roads that I wouldn't be on.
Or how many of you have gone out and rid subdivisions to pick up Wanderer miles?
I've done it, not for necessarily miles, but to get the miles in my town, and I've tried to complete Park City and Cave City and Horse Cave and all that stuff. And riding through various, I didn't even know we're there in that little town. It's kind of cool.
I think for solo riding, it's not a bad. I mean, I've just started doing that, and it's got a lot of stops and starts, to it.
But it's a good workout.
Let me ask you this: how accurate do you think the Wanderer Earth is?
It's as good as the map is. I mean, you're saying how good is the map?
Well, okay. Let me tell you this little story. Back on May the 4th, when Eddie and Tom Hughes were on Facebook, Eddie said, "Tom, you'll have the record on Wanderer Earth for a long time." And I piped up and said, "I'll have it. I'm just 600 miles behind." But I've ridden over 600 miles this month, and I'm still 100 miles behind.
Because not miles, it's points. It's points. When you
So
look
it's
at
all
that
based
Kentucky
on point.
leaderboard.
And Tom Hughes's numbers have gone up since that day in Kentucky.
Well, it might
I've
be
got the
counting. It might be
screenshot.
going
I've got the
back in my
screenshot to
history.
show it.
Yeah, now I don't know about that, but I do know that points, like I noticed this when Gayle and me were kind of going back and forth. She was ahead of me by like 30 points, right? Well, I went over purposely the Cave City and Horse Cave that I knew I'd only ridden 50% of. Well, at 75%, you get a 20% bonus. And I bumped both those cities over 75% and jumped ahead of her by riding 10 miles, but jumped ahead of her 100 points.
I really don't know how it works.
I don't know about Tom's doing it, but when you look at that leaderboard, that's not miles, that's points.
Yeah, see, I think that the reason I'm with this crew here who all ride a lot more miles than me, but I'm in Louisville and we have 1 million 6th class, 5th class, 4th class little cities.
Yeah.
And if you're just roaming through town and scooping up roads in these little cities, and I probably have a bunch of bonuses.
Oh, absolutely.
So even though
I do the same thing. Like I've completed 99% of Glasgow, Cave City, Park City. All of those have given me bonus points for doing that. And just like today, Danny, you're going to get 86 points added at midnight for being the high mileage. Well, I did that last month. Now last month I only got 68 points because it's 1 point for every person that's riding in the state. If you went out this month and rode 905 unique miles, you would get 6,900 bonus points for being the high mileage leader of the earth. Well, that would put you over top of Tom Hughes by riding 900 miles only.
Yeah, so that's confusing to me.
Yeah, it's because you got to look at what it is.
Miles or is it points?
It's points. It's a game. It's a game. That's what you got to remember. Yeah. If you were looking, I'm with you on the sense. I wish it was raw miles because it would be a very raw, simple thing. But he's made it like a game because if you ride 25% of a city, you get a 20% bonus point. At 50%, you only get a 5% bonus point. He's given you more bonuses for the lower percentages. But then if you pop over 99.1, you get a big bonus for doing something difficult.
Right. Well, and to be clear, you can sort that leaderboard lots of different ways. You can sort it by by percentage. You can do
Now percentages are hard to figure out because if you look, he'll never show how many miles are in a city. It doesn't anywhere show that. But the way you can figure it is I can go out and ride 5 new miles, see the percentage it moved me up, and then do the math. Okay. And say, okay, if 5 miles is 0.01%, you can decide, well, that city has X number of miles in it. And I had to go through and do that, comparing Bowling Green and Glasgow and things like that on miles. So there's improvements I would make, but we have to remember, if you look at how he markets this, it's a game.
Yeah.
And that's why there's ways to get, and it's not even bicycle racing. There's all kinds of bonuses in bicycle racing.
Here's the burning question. So Danny is looking down the barrel at Tom Hughes.
Yeah, he's only 115 points behind me.
Oh, yeah, man. He's got you in his crosshairs. He's going to pass you next month, he says. At the end of June, he thinks he's got you.
I think he will.
So my question is, will you then come back to Kentucky to try to pick up some new miles?
Ride cross state, Tom.
To try to dethrone him, or are you going to let him just wear that crown for a while?
Well, I wish I had time to ride to Kentucky and then ride around Kentucky. Believe me, there's nothing more I wish I could do. I have a full-time job now out here as a project manager.
Me too, man. I'm full-time.
Yeah, I'm 2,500 miles away. So
Tom, I would do the adult.
I'm going to be back around Thanksgiving, and I don't know. I might come down, and maybe Eddie will let me borrow a bike.
I will. Or you could just do the adult thing. When he suppresses you, delete Wander and pretend it like it never happened. I don't follow that.
I'm out.
I'm out. Hey. I got a new program.
Yeah.
I'm playing Pokemon.
I'd rather be first, and I'm not on there.
Well, Tom mentioned Duke Doe earlier. Yeah. And I know I had his sons in class, and I'm telling you right now, I have to believe the Duke has ridden, maybe not in more raw mileage, but that dude's gone everywhere. Yeah. He was the one who first did the 120 counties, and Duke has just been all over the place through all these years. And he would look great.
Yeah, let's remember the small sampling of Kentucky riders. We're talking there's 86 Kentucky riders on Wanderer. It's a small sampling.
Part of what I hope actually people will do is to come to Wanderer, but that may skew things with the leaderboard.
That's what's great.
It's okay.
What's great about this sport or life in general, though. There's all types. I mean, just like you were saying, Nathan, you like statistics. I do too. I get a kick out of it. I like looking at these numbers. But I ride with a guy in Glasgow, Bill Giddings. This guy doesn't ride with a watch. He just rides a bike.
Yeah, he just rides.
That's great, man. I think it's awesome, and there's nothing wrong with that. We all do different things, but I get a kick out of it. And I've told, just like Tom was saying, I've told a half dozen people about Wander who have jumped on it because it's neat. I think it's a neat service. It gives you something to look at. It gives you I think things like Wander or Strava are kind of a friendly competition that you can have fun with. You can't take it too seriously, but it's fun to chase that stuff. It gives you something to do.
And I really like it because it, just places that emphasis on exploring, and that's.
Hey, you get to an age, there's not that many blank pieces of paper in front of you anymore. But when you pick a new route and you get 50, 60 miles, you've just mapped out that you've never ridden for, that's a blank page. That's a good day when you can do that. So I dig it.
All right, guys. Well, we've gone on a lot longer than I thought we would, actually. So I'm going to kind of wrap things up here. Say thank you very much for your time. It's great to talk with all of you and get to see the faces behind all these impressive metrics with these Kentucky Wanderers. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Hey, thanks for doing it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, man. Peace out.
Good to meet all you guys, for sure. Keep exploring Kentucky.
Thanks again to the Kentucky Wanderers for being guests in the Kentucky Cycling Connection series. If you enjoyed this content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And be sure to check out the interview with Craig Durkin for more information about Wanderer.